I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, what's going on today?
It's a good day today, Bryce.
It is.
It's very sunny, nice fall day. Mm-hmm. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Yesterday at work was a little hectic because we, of course, going back to our last episode with that awesome interview with John Douglas, the tickets for the John Douglas event actually went on sale yesterday, and it was a little crazy.
Yeah.
So for those not in the know, I help obviously promote those events, and I work kind of behind the scenes with the ticketing on it. And it reminded me of the Neil Gaiman event from a few years ago when tickets went on sale and we sold like 1,700 tickets in like an hour or whatever it was. John Douglas, very similar. We sold, it was just over 750 tickets in like, I think it was within 2 hours.
Wow.
It was insane.
A lot of interest.
Yeah, so that's great. Everybody's really interested in the event. So thank you to everybody who got on there early and purchased tickets. For those of you who unfortunately weren't able to, we're sorry, but hey, we were happy to interview him and can still hear part of his story.
Yes, and if you're looking for a chance to get into that event, there is an opportunity for you to win a pair of tickets, and we will have more details on that at the end of this episode.
Yes, we will, but let's talk about today's episode because we have two awesome guests joining us today. First, I want to welcome back to the show Tamsin Shute. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, for listeners of the show, you were last on, I think it was episode 22.
That's right.
Called Children's Picture Books Are Where It's At.
And they still are where
Yeah.
They really are.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah. Listeners are probably wondering, they're like, what? Are they still where it's at?
Yeah.
But
And we've confirmed, breaking news, it is where it's at.
Definitely. And I have to say, actually, with that episode, we, of course, at the end of all of our episodes, we plug that we have a list kind of with all the books and movies, of course, that we talk about. And the list for the children's books episode is our most visited list to date for all of our episodes.
So proving my point.
Pretty much,
Absolutely.
yeah. We clearly need to do more children's books episodes.
I wanted to say that episode aired just before I joined the podcast. And so I was listening to it and doing my regular talking back to podcasts without an actual venue to talk back to the people. But now that I can talk to you, Bryce, Monster at the End of This Book is a classic and it is so good. And I loved your love for that book.
Yeah, it's funny because when we were going through that episode, I was like, hey, what book did I read? And just the cover just stood out at me. And of course, I had to go back and read it. And
yeah.
Such a great read.
Grover's pretty great.
Yes. And of course, joining us today, too, first time on the show, Dr. Amber Reichert. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting.
Can you explain to us a little bit about your role and kind of how you tie into our Welcome Baby program, which we'll be chatting about today?
Sure. So I'm a neonatologist here in Edmonton, and I work primarily at the Royal Alexandra Hospital as well as at our neonatal follow-up program. I got into this, it's a long, convoluted story, basically. Basically, it started as a quality improvement project. We are participating in a national study called Parent EPIC, which is Parent Evidence-Based Practice to Improve Quality. Kind of like a 10-step cookbook approach to implement evidence-based practices into our work. From the follow-up perspective, we know that babies who are born prematurely can be at higher risk for having challenges with their development down the road. And one of the highest morbidities that we see is in their language and speech development. We got together as a group with parents to give us guidance and let us know what is the most important, relevant, and meaningful kinds of interventions that we should do. And the stars aligned perfectly for us to stumble upon the Welcome Baby program.
Great. Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that when we get into this episode. Could you, I think I know what it means, but just so that I know what's going on, could you break down what neonatal means?
Sure. So neonatal pertains to newborn babies.
Okay.
So babies within the first 28 days of life are considered neonates, newborns. And basically what a neonatologist does is that we're a pediatrician, but we've specialized to look after neonatal intensive care babies. So babies who are born prematurely or babies who have medical complications during the first part of their life.
Well, I know, Caroline, you don't have any kids.
I do not.
I don't have any kids, so I have a feeling we're going to learn a lot in today's episode.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. But, of course, before we get into a little bit more about the Welcome Baby program and some of the awesome work that we're doing, let's share some of our recent Overdue Finds. Amber, as a first-time guest, is there a book or movie or anything that you can recommend to our listeners?
Oh, definitely. There's a few. The first one that I've just finished recently is a book by Dr. Martina Schultens from Vancouver. She wrote a memoir called Your Heart is the Size of Your Fist. And it's a memoir about her time working in a refugee clinic. It was so eye-opening and so amazing. And she's such an inspiration in the way that she approaches families and parents, and really enjoyed that. The other one that I've read a long time ago, but my husband and I just watched the movie together, was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Yes.
What an excellent story. Wow.
So what one, I've heard of it, but what's it about?
Oh, it's about the origin of the HeLa cells, which are the cells that are used in cellular research that are still alive today from many, many years ago, from an unfortunate family whose mother died of cervical cancer. And, those cells were harvested and have contributed to a tremendous amount of scientific research.
Yeah, and the story raises such interesting ethical questions around patient consent and medical experimentation, and the legacy of treatment, and just as well as bringing race and class and historical perspectives, and then in the modern world. It's a fascinating story, and I believe the movie was produced by Oprah.
Yep.
Was that? Yeah, very
So
interesting.
good quality control there.
Yeah, an
Oprah's
important
involved.
story. Yeah, an
Yes,
important
yes.
story. And we know from the Anthony Ray Hinton interview that we did that she is, passionate about championing these really important stories into the public consciousness.
Caroline, how about you?
So I have a title that won me over just from the title, and it is Baby Monkey Private Eye by Brian Selznick and David Serlin.
Can I admit something?
Yeah.
You don't even need to tell me much more about it. You've already sold me based on the title
It
as
is
well.
the best news is because Brian Selznick is such an amazing illustrator, artist, book creation guy, that the book is exactly as good as you hope it will be, from the title of Baby Monkey Private Eye.
It's a really good one.
Yeah. Oh, good. You've read.
Of course I
Okay.
read
Yes.
that.
Good. I was hoping. So the story, because there are chapters in this book, is that Baby Monkey is a private eye, and he takes on these cases for when he looks for stolen jewels or missing pizza, and so these people come to his detective agency, and then he has to jump in to solve the case, which is like a multi-step process of looking for clues, writing notes, eating a snack, and most importantly, putting on his pants. And that
Very important.
sometimes is the hardest part, but there's a lot of repetition. The pictures are amazing. The illustrations, there's such detail in them that this, it's almost a joke to say that this book works on a number of different levels, but it's so true because, for the kids who want to pore over the detail, the level of detail in the illustration is incredible. It's very funny, and you can do it as kind of like a call and repeat. The repetition allows kids, even if they're pre-readers, to take part in the story itself. It's classified as kind of an early chapter book, but it's also like an early chapter book, graphic novel, picture book, which are about 3 different genres of children's books, all mixed together, and it's just incredible. So Baby Monkey Private Eye is my overdue find.
That sounds amazing. I like how you said the cases range from finding jewels to finding pizza.
Yes.
So it's quite the range there.
Oh, Baby Monkey can do it all, for sure.
Well, and I think trying to put on pants is a pretty universal theme as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
At least.
Yeah. So, a lot of people can relate
Yes.
to the topic there.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. What have you been enjoying, Bryce?
So I've been just recently started watching on HBO, the series Righteous Gemstones has come out, and it stars Danny McBride. Most people know him as Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down, but so far I'm enjoying it. But the series I actually want to recommend to everybody came out a few years ago. It's called Vice Principals. Has anybody here watched that?
You're triggering a memory, but I can't quite place it.
All right, so Vice Principals is basically stars Danny McBride and Walton Goggins, and they play a couple of high school vice principals, obviously, and basically the principal, his job comes open, so these two vice principals basically kind of go to war to try and become the principal of this high school. So this is very much a very dark comedy, and if you like kind of like that really kind of dark / really awkward comedy that you might see in something, say, like Curb Your Enthusiasm or even The Office, it's definitely like basically it's definitely a rated R show. But if you like your comedy awkward and dark, check out Vice Principals, because we have the first 2 seasons on DVD here at the library.
Oh, that's great. I do like my comedy awkward, so I might need to check that out.
Yeah, it's really good. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
So Tamsin,
Yes.
how about you? I know we saved you for last because you have an excellent pick that kind of ties into our topic today.
Yeah, it's kind of a segue book.
Yeah.
It's called Spot 12, 5 Months in the Neonatal ICU, and it's a graphic memoir by Jenny Jekyll. And she's a Canadian or American, at least she's living in Canada. I believe she lives in Victoria. She's from Northern California, and she now lives in Victoria. And it's her story of her daughter being born and all of a sudden being in the NICU and what that experience is like. And the pictures are really stark. It's black and white. She uses animals instead of people. The way she tells the story, you really get the parent perspective. And you see how important the relationships with the nurses are in particular. That's what I've really got out from it. And it's just a really interesting perspective. If you've never been in the NICU, it's a way to have that window into what that could be.
And it's a graphic novel, right?
It is a graphic novel,
Nice.
yes.
Even for, I guess, somebody like myself who doesn't have kids, it's still definitely worth checking out, just to kind of, as you say, get that view of kind of what the NICU is, I guess, all about.
Absolutely. And I know Amber and I were talking earlier about how it should be like required reading for anyone working in the NICU,
Yeah.
just so you have that perspective of what the family is going through, because it's a super intense experience.
Yeah, there's something we've talked in the past, Bryce. We both read a lot of graphic memoirs, and there's something about using pictures to tell a story, to make it accessible, to be a window into that world. There are also a number of great prose memoirs and other resources, and I know that we're going to talk about some later on in the show, but the skill of a graphic memoir can be just a really easy way to kind of jump into that world so that you can start to experience a little bit, just a tiny slice of what the families or the patients are experiencing.
Mm-hmm. She did a beautiful job in terms of her graphic representation of what parents' emotions are. You can see it in the body language, and as she's drawn it, it was incredible just looking at exactly how she's expressed some of the emotions and experiences that she had. It was really beautifully done.
Great. Well, before we get too much into that, because we are going to return to this topic, but we wanted to start by talking about the Welcome Baby program. And Tamsin, maybe you could tell us, what is the Welcome Baby? How long has EPL been running this?
So Welcome Baby is kind of the catch-all name for a number of things that EPL does to support babies and families. So one part of Welcome Baby is that whenever a child from 0 to 36 months comes into the library, gets their library card, we have a package, and that has a book that the family can choose. There's a number of different titles, so families can choose the book that's best suited for them. As well, we give a song and rhyme booklet, and that has sample songs like a diaper changing song and a bath time rhyme, the types of things that we would do in our baby lap time sessions, so families get a bit of a sense of what we offer and ideas of things that they can share at home with their family. And then we realized we wanted to reach every baby in Edmonton, and we weren't doing that through people coming in, signing up for cards. So we looked at how we could go out and connect with more families. And the way it happened was through a relationship with Alberta Health Services. EPL has an incredible relationship with Alberta Health Services. Our Sing, Sign, Laugh and Learn program was developed with the early intervention program. What we did is we've connected with the public health centers. So whenever an infant is at that 2-month immunization at any public health center in Edmonton, they receive a package from the library. So they get an adorable little bag, and then it has a book, a CD with a download code, and then a few brochures with early literacy information, suggestions of books, and that invitation to come in and get that second book. Right there in the clinic rooms, the public health nurses are using that package as a way to talk about postpartum depression, eyesight, language development. So they're using it as a tool. It also helps to brighten up that very traumatic 2-month immunization. It's the first immunization for most infants, and it's a lot for families to go through.
So I imagine too, especially with, you go into the clinic for the 2-month immunization. I mean, I can only imagine how busy it is for parents in those first few months, probably even especially for those first time parents as well. So, probably going into the library isn't really at the top of their first thing in their minds at the moment.
No, it seems impossible for a while. I mean, I was hit by a train when I had my first child. It took me a long time to do, I'm still not functioning well.
But you've been to the library.
Yes.
I do show up every day.
No, I'm always amazed. I think 9 days might be the youngest baby I've seen in the library, and it's wonderful, and we're so excited. And I know that there are probably parents who are just happy to have a place that they can go to with their child if they're looking for it, especially if they have older children as well, because they can run around, play with our toys, make a mess, and then they can leave. And you can just have that. The library offers that welcome place for them, but when you see the newest babies, it's always quite special.
Yeah, and what we heard from a lot of families, we got feedback from families who were coming to our baby lap times, and a lot of them said that when they received the Welcome Baby package at the public health centers, well, it served a few purposes. For some people, it was just eye-opening. Oh, I didn't know I could even bring a baby to the library. I didn't know you could read to babies. So for some people, it was quite, educational in that way. And for other people, it was a reminder. They knew the library was here. They knew there was baby programs. They knew when they were pregnant, they would probably go to library story times. But they hadn't actually felt like they could get it together. And so at that 2-month point, they got the package and then thought, hey, actually, we're doing okay now. I can do this. And so for many people, it was that reminder that they needed to take that step to come into our libraries.
Nice. I always love seeing those images on social media. We'll retweet them. So where basically the parents come in with their baby and it's like baby's first card, and those are great. So we always love seeing those on social media. So tag us in those photos.
Yeah,
it's the best. It's the best.
So you mentioned that by having the packages at the public health centers, we were now reaching more people, but not everyone.
Not everybody.
Tell us more about that.
And that's where
Right, yes. So a while back, there was one of the Edmonton Public Library newsletters, and I think it was actually the same one that had the Neil Gaiman article in it, because that caught my eye too. So we were working through our quality improvement group, the Parent Epic group, and so there was a team of us from the NICU, from the follow-up clinic, and some parents joined us. And we were talking about, why is it that our premature babies are struggling with language? A part of the process of going through that 10-step process is to actually brainstorm and think about what are all the contributing factors to try and figure out where can we tackle things. One of the things that we know in the background is from the science that babies born prematurely in the NICU are not going to hear the same sounds that they would hear if they were walking around, if mom was walking around with the baby in her tummy and carrying on about her day. So it just so happened that the stars aligned, and one of the group members, Laurel, she's our nurse coordinator for the follow-up program, got her EPL newsletter, and she emailed it to me, and she's like, hey, check out this Welcome Baby thing. And I looked at it and went, what? Wait a minute. We have lots of babies in the NICU who are there for many months, who often get their 2-month immunization while they're there in the NICU, and I said, wait, they aren't getting, I've never seen this package in the NICU. So immediately got on the computer, figuring out where the contact like how do I get a hold of the person who is responsible for this, and that's how Tamsin and I met.
So yeah, I got a magical phone call. Like, of course those babies need their package.
Yeah.
I'll be right down.
So were there any concerns at all? Because when I think of the NICU, I picture a very sterile environment. And the welcome baby packages are things that you are introducing into this environment. So were there any concerns around that?
Of course. I mean, parents bring things in from home, though. We
Yeah.
want them to.
Right.
We want them to bring things to make it familiar for themselves, to be more comfortable, but also for their baby to get to know them. While they're there, it's like a home away from home in a sense. And so we do have to be mindful of having things that are clean, and we're always emphasizing hand washing and things like that. But these are new packages,
Yeah.
so a parent can bring in a book from home
Yeah.
or from the library if they happen to go to the library and get a library book. So
A way to kind of build in a tiny bit of that comfort, that familiarity of things that might be familiar, even if the books or the package itself is new. The idea of maybe having a book and reading can build that familiarity.
what we really wanted to do, one of our big goals, was to change the culture of the NICU. There is a certain importance in maintaining a quiet environment and promoting sleep, but sometimes we go a little too far. In that we're not talking at the right time, in the right way to babies, and this provided us with a tool to be able to do that. And so what I wanted to do, my personal ultimate goal, was to say, let's change the culture so that we make it normal to talk to, read to, sing to. A lot of our staff already do that. They've been doing that for years, but we really want to make it more so that parents feel extremely comfortable with reading to, singing to, talking to their babies. And then our job as medical staff, the bedside staff, the nursing staff, is to try to help the parents to know, to learn their baby's cues to say, I'm ready for interaction, or I need quiet time right now.
So obviously you mentioned that interacting with your baby, and then even too when they're in the NICU, they don't really get that, I guess, communication with mom while she's obviously pregnant with the baby. So why is that so important then for babies to, especially after they're born and they are in the NICU, for them to continue to get, I guess, hear words and voices?
Right. Well, their brains are still developing. I think that's the key thing, is that babies at the stage they come into the NICU, the most extremely preterm babies, their brains have developed a lot of the cells that they are going to have for the rest of their life. And what they're doing is they're forming a lot of connections. They're reaching out, all those little cells are reaching out branches to connect to other cells. And that happens by way of experience. And so the language centers of the brain, which are the parts around the sides of the brain, those parts are we know that they're different between premature babies versus a term baby. There's some really great studies that have been done looking at MRI and the surface of the brain when the baby gets to term, comparing a term baby to a preterm baby who's now at term, and showing that there's a difference in how much folding there is on the surface of the brain. The premature babies tend to have less folding because they just haven't made as many connections. When we look at sound recordings of the environment that they hear, they do hear lots of sounds, but the sounds are not the same as what they would have heard. They're not spoken language. They're not sort of the muffled, muted traffic noises or whatever that they might have heard while they're in mom's tummy. They hear a lot more beeps, alarms, ventilator noises, opening and closing of doors. It's really
Especially
important.
too, like obviously the book that is in this package, when you're actually communicating directly to,
Yes.
your newborn baby, that's, like you said, it's so much more important.
Babies are hardwired to orient to their parents' voice. They're hardwired for it, so they will preferentially turn to mom's voice as opposed to another voice. So that's the sound that's the first sound that babies hear as their hearing develops, as the organs are developing when they're inside mom's tummy. Those are the first sounds that they hear, is mom's body and mom's voice. So it's really important to encourage that to continue as much as possible. There's a secondary benefit to it, though, in that it also helps the parents. As Tamsin mentioned, like being in the NICU, it can be so overwhelming and traumatic. Nobody expects it. Nobody plans to have a baby in the NICU, and it's such a foreign world. So many people don't know what is the NICU, what's it all about. And when you suddenly have this unexpected traumatic experience of having a sick baby or a baby that's born prematurely, and you're coming into the NICU, a lot of parents express that they don't know they don't feel like parents. They don't feel like they know, they haven't bonded in the same way that they might have done otherwise. This just allows the parents to actually feel like parents, to do something with their baby, something that's meaningful and important and relevant. One of the parent members on our Parent Epic team said, she said, I read to my kids. Of course I read to my kids. It's important. However, it didn't occur to me that I should be reading to my baby while we were in the NICU. I was so focused on the medical things that were going on with her. So we know it's important.
Yeah, I imagine, like myself, obviously I don't have any kids. You kind of think like, well, I don't really remember stuff from when I was a baby. So what, is it really that important to be, reading to them? They're probably not taking any of it in, but clearly they are. So that's excellent.
They can hear as early as 24 to 25 weeks gestation. All of the medical parts of our brain, all the anatomic pieces in our brain are actually fully developed. Mm-hmm. And babies do start to respond to sound consistently right around that time.
I remember when I started at EPL, one of my first jobs here was as an early literacy librarian, and so spent a lot of time in the world of early literacy. And one of the things that we really wanted to get across to parents at the time was it doesn't matter what you read, or it doesn't matter what you say to the child, in a sense of it doesn't need to be the perfect book. It doesn't need to be something specific. It can be whatever you're interested in. If you're at home and you have a sports magazine, read them the sports magazine, read them the newspaper, narrate your day, talk back to the radio, all of these things going on. My first book, the first story that I ever had read to me as a new baby, was King Lear, because that's what my dad wanted to read. And so, it didn't really matter. It was just about the voice and the words. But when you're in that environment, as you say, where you're not expected to be, you're not quite sure what's going on, you don't know how you can help, you might feel overwhelmed by it, having something like the Welcome Baby package that's given to you can eliminate some of the need to make the decision. Here's a book, you can read this one, rather than which book do I use. I'm not sure about that.
It is permission, because a lot of the parents aren't sure what they're allowed to do. They don't feel like it's their space.
Yeah.
And the nurses are in charge, and they don't know how they can interact. So having that book and that package given is instant permission to interact with your baby.
I would fully agree with that. A lot of the parents, sometimes they're in a space where they're so stressed too that they just don't know what to say. They might be their baby might be medically fragile, and they might be struggling with what's happening with their baby and just don't know what to say and don't know how to be positive and interact with their child. And so another parent that I worked with expressed that sometimes it allowed us to just talk to our baby when we just didn't have words otherwise. The books are a tool. I'm quoting Tamsin here. The books are a tool, really. They're not the be-all and end-all. It's not really the reading. It's the voice. It's the sound. It's the baby hearing that. And Tamsin really expressed it nicely in terms of why is it important, talking about the 5 strategies and playing with shapes and things like that with babies. It boils down to the medical piece of it, is that brain is making all those connections. And that's how it makes those connections, is through those experiences. And so there's all these foundational building blocks that the baby is building the whole time that they're there. Every single experience matters for these babies. I'm quoting Emil Thiessen here. We only have one brain for life. So every experience matters.
It sounds like that can give the validation of these exercises, because I'm imagining that in something like the NICU, it can seem like, like staying alive is number one. The medical pieces, and so reading, talking, this could be seen as frivolous or extra or nice to do if you have a chance. And in the work that you're talking about, it just really emphasizes how important that brain development is for their ongoing growth and learning.
That's right. It's when we're talking about the medical side of things are right there. They're tangible, they're real, they're in front of us, and so we're doing things to fix it. The challenge with helping to support babies' brains is that we just don't see those immediate feedback unless you're trained to look for it. Our program actually here in Edmonton is the only NIDCAP training center. NIDCAP stands for Newborn Individualized Developmental Care and Assessment Program. And one of my dear mentors, Dr. Juzer Taibkan, is the trainer for that program. And babies do talk to us, but they use a very subtle language. They're very subtle. And so it's not as tangible as the medical challenge that you see right in front of you of a baby who needs a breathing machine, for example, or a baby who needs to have IV nutrition because they're not ready to take in nutrition into their tummy. That's tangible. So, of course, we see that, we do that, we respond to that. That's our focus. Yeah. But the consequences of not paying attention to that baby's development is so crucial, and we see it down the road. We see the consequences and challenges that the families have to sometimes struggle with and cope with.
It's not nice to have, it's essential.
Yeah. I like to think that maybe there's some like new dads listening to this episode and are like, it's okay, I can read the hockey news to my
last episode,
son or daughter or something like that.
A recent episode, we talked about wrestling biographies.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Just give your opinions on, this season's draft picks or hockey pools, like have that conversation and talk as if they were answering back. And so they get into that habit of conversation even before they really know what it is.
There's a study here, I can feel it. Thinking about the fact that you listened to King Lear as the first book. Now I wonder how that shaped your career choices. Right?
Well, I don't know if I want to go there, but my dad does listen to the podcast. But yeah, and I think that it really was something. My mom came home and he was reading to me, and she said, what are you doing? And she said, well, she was sad, so I read her a sad story. And like that was that approach, but it's what he was interested in. So having that connection, being comfortable when you're doing something that you might otherwise feel a little uncomfortable about because it's new, you've never done it.
Yeah.
Well, and Amber and I had an interesting experience. We were presenting at the ANA conference, the Alberta Neonatal Nurse Association.
I remember this experience. It was quite fun.
And so we presented alongside a speech and language pathologist.
Yes, Julia. She was our SLP, though. She used to work in the follow-up clinic, and now she works in the NICU helping with feeding struggles and challenges.
So we were presenting, and one of the follow-up questions from the audience was a nurse who had concern because one of the dads was in the NICU in a private room, and he was reading out loud a book about like a serial killer. And so I think she was a bit concerned about that. Yeah. And I mean, our response is like, it doesn't really matter. The baby doesn't know. All the baby hears is her father's voice, which is warm and sweet and present. Yeah. And nobody else could hear. And whenever someone came into the room, he would, stop and be quiet. And so we had to kind of let her know that's okay, because even, at this stage, there's a lot of judgment that parents face. So, and when you're in the hospital, you're already in this strange situation. There's so much judgment and guilt that a parent experiences regardless. I still feel guilty as a parent. But, to have that layer on top of a nurse judging what you're reading to your baby, that's really hard.
So what has the experience of working on this project been like for you?
Fun. So really fun. I've learned to be comfortable in my own skin singing out loud and in public, thanks to Tamsin.
Yes, I force everybody to sing now. Amber sings.
Yeah, I do. And when we were doing the lead up to the launch at the Royal Alec last September, I did a lot of PR, like personal going around the NICU. I happened to have some time where I wasn't on service, and so I had time to go to our morning huddle, and I had to teach people to sing the song that Tamsin taught us, and so I would get people to sing the Changing Diapers song, which was, an experience for me. But it also, there was a particular experience I had with a bedside nurse that really proved to me how important it was for me to be a champion and a model in the NICU, because I do have to change people's minds. I do have to make it that this is something we do to take care of these babies. In that she was changing a baby's diaper. The baby had been in the NICU for quite some time, so was kind of nearing readiness for discharge, but not quite there. And she was doing the diaper change because parents weren't there, and he was wigging out. really unhappy. And I said, oh, I think this baby needs a song. And she just gave me that side-eye look. Right. So I said, okay. So I started to sing to the baby, and he stopped crying, and he opened these beautiful big brown eyes and just watched while I was singing to him. She got the diaper change done, and he was nice and settled afterwards. So it just proved to me that it really does work. It really works. Babies respond so well to that. And, you know, just by showing that I'm comfortable to do it, even though I don't like to sing in public, I don't like to sing in front of people, then maybe it will make other people more comfortable to take that chance and be a bit vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Singing is an incredibly powerful tool. I mean, as a parent, you know, when we have challenging moments, I pull out a song or a book, and those are the things that I can use to calm my children, to calm myself. If I'm calm, chances are that they'll be more, it's easier for them to be calm.
It's going to help,
Yeah.
for
It's gonna
sure.
help.
Yeah.
If mom's slipping out, it's not going to help. But people often forget, and when you're a new parent, you just don't even know. And to know that your voice is the most powerful tool that you can use with a new baby is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And that thought isn't always shared in our culture. You know, we're not a culture that sings as a group, collectively, comfortably. Everyone feels horrible about their own voices,
Oh,
and
yeah.
nobody wants to sing in public.
We were talking earlier before
Yeah.
we started recording about, you know, that moment when you're a kid usually and you hear your voice for the first time and you have this reaction that kind of shapes, I think, you know, people feel self-conscious about singing even when no one is around.
Absolutely. And a baby doesn't care if you're hitting the notes. The baby just wants to hear you.
Yeah.
That's so true.
So
And
you're-
there's science behind it. There's science that show that the brain of the person singing changes. They release all the happy hormones, and the brain of the babies change.
Well, so if you think you can't sing, you're probably going to sound like Adele to your baby then. Basically.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The baby's never heard Adele.
That's
like
right.
the baby has not been to an Adele concert.
And so when we were launching the program, so I should mention the Welcome Baby takes place at the Royal Alexandra NICU, and we've recently expanded to the Covenant sites. So we're now at the Grey Nuns and the Misericordia. And so before we launched at any of these hospitals, Amber and I did lunch and learns with the staff. And so we talked about, you know, the brain development, we talked about early literacy, what this program looks like, and we talked about these experiences, about bringing song and how powerful that can be. And of course, I forced the entire audience to sing as well.
Yeah.
So we're winding down, but if there are any new parents listening to this podcast today, I guess what would you like to tell them? And are there any books that you could recommend that they read? Amber, I'll start with you.
Oh gosh, well, there's lots and lots and lots of books out there. I'm going to direct this more to NICU parents to begin with. However, some of this is pertinent to any parent and any baby. Know that when you are coming into the NICU, you are still the parent. You are still your baby's most important person. And, you know, that is something this has changed my practice in that's one of the first things that I talk to parents about when they come into the NICU, when I'm giving them that first, okay, this is what's going on with your baby. I always ask, tell me, I want you to think about how I can help you to be a parent. So just know that you are the parent, and no matter what we can do to support you, there's nothing too big, just ask. In terms of books to recommend, there's so many. I can't, it really depends on what you're looking for. As a parent in the NICU, sometimes having resources that can help you to understand the NICU. There are podcasts, there are social media groups, there are web iPhone apps or phone apps that you can use. We've published one from our own center called Life's Little Love that helps you to learn the lingo and learn what to expect and have some idea about what to do. But there's also lots of books that you can read as well. And one of my recent favorites is a little book called The Fae Fairies Saved the NICU. It's a great book to read to your baby or read to your baby's siblings, for example.
Tamsin, how about yourself?
The book that meant a lot to me when I had kids, and I tried reading lots of books. Well, I didn't try that hard, honestly. I just didn't have the time. The only book that actually made a difference to me as a new parent was The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding, which is a La Leche League book. And it was the one book that was written in a really empowering tone, where it just reminds you to trust your instincts It gives you fair information, and it's up to you to choose what to do with that information. I found, when I was trying to get my kids to actually sleep, which they still don't do, but I tried reading a lot of sleep books, and a lot of them just had all this like guilt and what I should do and shouldn't do, and I couldn't handle that approach. And The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding was just the most supportive book that I found. I loved it. So
that should be added to the book list for sure.
Nice. Well, we'll have a link to that in our show notes today.
And Amber's actually putting together a book list for us as well, so you can check out that link too.
I saw a sneak preview of it the other day as I was getting ready for this episode, and yeah, it looks like a fantastic list. And of course, we will link to that too.
There's one other book I wouldn't mind
Oh,
recommending
yeah.
just to parents in general. That was one of my favorites to read to my kids, and it's called I Love You, Stinky Face. That's the best book for me.
Yeah, and each of our library branches has a whole bunch of children's books. We have a children's collection in each location, and we encourage parents to come in and browse and find titles that might be new to them, what clicks with their kid, and then you can bring the books back and you can try something else if it's not working. So
absolutely. Yeah. And as a parent with young kids, I constantly have 40 books out on my library card at a time because we go through so many books. So it's a wonderful way to be able to share all sorts of ideas and words with your kids. And I want to invite all the families who have those infants 0 to 36 months, they're not infants at that point, to come to the library, get your card, and in that 2-month immunization, make sure to ask for your package if you didn't already get it. And I wanted to add that Welcome Baby is a volunteer-supported program. We have volunteers who pack the bags as well as deliver them to the public health centers and now to the hospitals.
Wow,
So
that's
important.
great. Yeah, it's so great that volunteers can be a part of EPL in that way. One last plug for our children's collection. We talked a lot about books. I do want to say we also have CDs as well as material in other languages. So if English isn't your first language or it's not the language you're most comfortable in, we have resources for all ages in those languages, as well as wordless picture books, which can be a really great way of, just describe the pictures. Maybe you're not as confident a reader and you're not sure where to start. A book without words, just has pictures, still gives you a lot to talk about.
And that's one thing we always talk to parents about, is speaking to your baby in your home language, the language that you're most comfortable with, because that's how they learn language, is from your home language. They will pick up English later on, that's fine. They just need a good foundation.
So before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, what is coming up in our next episode?
We've had quite the range of topics lately on
I love
the
it.
show.
We're eclectic.
We are. We really are. We're a podcast for everyone. So obviously, next episode, we're going to be going in a little bit of a different direction. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite genres of movies, because Halloween's coming up. Horror. EPL staff member Indy Randhawa will be joining us to break down the different types of horror movies and some of the hidden gems that you can find here at EPL. So obviously just in time for Halloween.
Yes.
Caroline, I don't know if we've really talked about it much on the show, but are you a horror movie fan?
I wouldn't say that it is a genre that I'm particularly drawn to, but I have a feeling that the more that I think about it, there will be ones that I've seen and enjoyed and really like. I'm really excited to learn for sure what I've maybe missed or what's out there, as well as this different genres, because I think of horror movies as one thing, and no, there's lots of different types is what I'm gathering.
Yeah, it's funny because Indy sent me an email. He was like, hey, I'd really love to be on the show to talk about horror movies. And he basically gave us 6 episode ideas, and they were all kind of tied into different genres of horror movies. So we're going to be chatting about that next episode. It'll be really fun. Yeah.
We end every episode by having some quick roundtable questions. And in the children's literature episode, Tamsin, that you were on, we referred to earlier, books that we read as young kids came up, which was where I immediately went to for a roundtable question. So I couldn't use that. So instead of books, what music do you remember from listening to when you were a kid?
Well, As a kid, I listened to a lot of my parents' music, just because, I mean, I think all kids do.
Yeah.
So, you know,
They're
there's
in
a lot.
charge of the stereo.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
My parents took me to the folk festival a lot. There was always lots of live music. But growing up and starting to take over my own listening preferences, I listened to a lot of oldies. So it was all like 50s and 60s music. So when I was in elementary, I was painfully uncool because I didn't know what all the new songs were. But I knew every song from like 1953. And so as an adult, I'm very happy with my choices.
Yeah.
But in elementary, I was not a cool kid.
You're like, none of these kids are into Buddy Holly for some
They
reason.
weren't.
Yeah.
They weren't at
Or
all.
The Beatles, jeez.
But I'm very good at karaoke now because of my good repertoire.
I love it.
Nice. Amber, how about you?
Oh gosh, same thing as Tamsin said. I listened to a lot of what my parents listened to. So I remember hearing lots of John Denver and ABBA and Neil Diamond were kind of the big ones.
Nice.
What about you, Bryce?
Well, kind of getting back to, of course, you're in the vehicle with your parents. You pretty much have to listen to what they listen to. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. I think I've probably heard that album like a million times throughout the course of my life. So that's a big one. But the one album that I remember, I think I mentioned this on the show before, that I remember buying at a young age with like my own money was Michael Jackson's Thriller. So that was another one too where I think I got it probably when I was like maybe 4 or 5, I think, and listened to that album a lot. So that was Fleetwood Mac and Michael Jackson, I guess. So total 80s kid.
When we were driving around, when my mom was driving, the kids had control of the music. So we had all these like Disney song tapes that we would listen to. So there was a lot of Disney music. But absolutely, like I listened to a lot of Sharon, Lois, and Bram as a young child. And then watching the Elephant Show, I was so jealous of the kids who got to be in the audience at their concerts. I was just watching, be like, oh, those kids, they get to see them live.
They don't even know how good
Yeah.
they
They don't. So Sharon, Lois, and Bram was definitely on the rotation in our house.
Nice. So last question. Amber, I'll start with you. What do you usually give to new parents as a baby gift?
Oh gosh, up until recently, I'd always give a stuffy and a blanket and a little outfit. And more recently now, I give away more books. So that's, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tamsin, how about you?
Well, I'm a youth services lawyer.
You know where this is going?
Yes, I mean, it depends on, if it's the first child or the second child. So there's a variety of things that I've given over the years, but there's always a book. And I try to find a local author, a Canadian author. I've given Richard Van Camp books out many times because he writes such beautiful picture books for new babies.
Nice. Caroline, how about you?
Yeah, well, if I was giving a gift, there's usually a book, but then I would usually pair that with a gift card for like Skip the Dishes or food or groceries or something like that, because I don't know how they can do it. So I'm just in awe, and this way it doesn't take up space in the freezer.
And Caroline, you gave me some beautiful baby blocks. When my son was born, we still have them and play with them.
Nice. All right, so thank you so much for both of you for joining us today. This was I learned a lot today, and this was really good. So thank you, Tamsin. Is there anything else you want to kind of let anybody know about? I think you mentioned in November there's an important event coming up.
Absolutely, and I think this is also quite dear to Amber's heart.
Yep.
But November 17th is World Prematurity Day.
Yes, it is.
And I know that there'll be some events going on at some of the hospitals as well as at the Glen
At the
Rose.
follow-up clinic, too. Yep. We're basically having, each hospital is hosting a tea. And so that's where NICU graduates can come back, and the nurses and doctors and all the allied health staff that look after the babies all get to stop in and see how these kids are doing and, reconnect with some of the parents that we've
Reunion.
developed relationships with. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Great. Well, we will have a link
Yeah.
to that information in our show notes as well.
As well as the Welcome Baby page on our website, just so I know we talked a lot about it today, but if you want to read a little bit more into it, you can check that out. So yeah, thank you so much once again for joining us today. This was great. Also, don't forget that there's still time for you to enter our contest for Overdue Finds listeners, where you can win a pair of tickets to the sold-out John Douglas event on October 28th. We mentioned at the top of the show, it's sold out within a matter of like a couple of hours.
Yeah.
It was insane. So really, it's like the hottest ticket in Edmonton right now.
Yeah, so there are two ways of entering. The first one is to leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts between now and October 21st. Let us know what you like best about the show in your review, and then email
A screenshot of your review. So
We need to get in touch with
We
you.
need to get in touch with you. We didn't mention that in the last episode. I thought about it afterwards. I was like, oh, that's because typically when you
Yeah.
leave a review on Apple Podcasts, it just has like your
username.
name. We don't know you from that. So
Yeah.
please send us a screenshot.
Yeah.
Since we know that not everyone listens on Apple Podcasts, you can also head to Twitter and let us know of your own personal overdue find. Just use the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds and tag us at EPL.ca in your message. So let us know what you've been enjoying lately. Maybe there's something that we talked about in the show today and you're like, oh, you know what? I loved reading this book to my son or daughter, and share that with us. And the best part is we will enter you in the contest to win a pair of tickets to the John Douglas event.
Yeah, so the contest closes on October 21st, 2019, just in time for you to get your tickets to the event. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. As Bryce mentioned, we learned a lot, and it was wonderful to hear these stories and of the importance of this program. If you haven't, we encourage you to subscribe so that you automatically get new episodes. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can also tell a friend about the show.
And don't forget, of course, we mentioned it earlier, but we will have a link to everything we talked about today. There's some great book recommendations. So if you want to share your thoughts on this episode with us, please email us at podcast@epl.ca or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.